So, after a visit to Uzbekistan, I am back in New Delhi, and there is a lot of food for thought, of course, other than the food that we spoke about while I was in Tashkent, that I carry with myself about not just what is happening within Uzbekistan, but how is it key to the larger Central Asian region, and how does that fit into the region itself, including for India, for organizations like Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Remember, India is hosting the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit this year in July. And to talk about all of this, I'm now joined in this part of the podcast by Ashok Sajjanhar. He's a former retired ambassador who has served as the ambassador to several countries, including to Kazakhstan, to Sweden, to Latvia. Currently, of course, he does a lot of research work. He contributes regular articles, analysis with different forums, including IDSA, ORF as well, Ananta Aspen Center too. Ambassador Sajjanhar, many thanks for joining me here on this podcast. And I know that you were supposed to be in Uzbekistan as well, but there was some last minute emergency, so we missed your presence there during the constitutional referendum.
Thank you very much, Smita. It's always a pleasure to be in touch with you. Thank you.
So if I could start by asking you, a little bit about, it's been a few days since we've had the referendum, and President Mirziyoyev essentially, the main point is that while he has brought about a lot of changes in provisions, text 65% of revision of basic law to the constitution. The point is that it paves the way for him to be in office till 2040 with two additional terms of 7 years each. How do you view President Mirziyoyev? Does he come across as the reformer that many in the West had begun to think of him as? Or does he come across as somebody who's a strongman with the tendencies of an autocrat?
Thank you very much, Smita. Once again, thank you for inviting me to your podcast, to your show. As far as President Mirziyoyev is concerned, he assumed office in December of 2016 after the predecessor, Islam Karimov. He passed away in September of that year, suddenly. Now, before that, Shaukat Mirziyoyev had been Prime Minister under Islam Karimov for about 13 years. And people had really not heard anything about him. He would do everything that President Islam Karimov wanted him to do. But I think once he assumed power, he became the top boss, so to say, in Uzbekistan in December 2016. I think his reformist urges came to the fore, and he has really transformed that country in more ways than one. I have visited that country when it was a part of the Soviet Union. I have visited the country when it was under Islam Karimov. And I have visited the country also over recent years. And I can tell you that the transformation is truly miraculous and mind boggling. And some people have called it a silent revolution. Some people have called it a revolution from the top because normally revolutions are supposed to be happening from the bottom. And I think he has really, whether it is in the area of economy, it is in the area of politics, it's in the area of social fabric of the society, he has transformed it completely. And there are so many changes that have been brought in. All the changes, Smita, that he's been bringing in over the last 6, 7 years since he came to power, all these have now been codified in the constitution. And I think it's going to be extremely good for not only Uzbekistan, not only India Uzbekistan relations, but also the Central Asian region. And if I may just add one more point to this opening comment about President Shaukat Mirziyoyev, is that he was the president who, after assuming power, really brought the five countries of Central Asia together. You'd be surprised that since the time that these countries became independent from the Soviet Union after the disintegration of that country in 1991, the leaders of these five countries had never met as representatives, as leaders of Central Asian countries themselves. It is only after Shaukat Mirziyoyev came to power that this practice of annual sessions, which are called informal consultative meetings, etc., that started. It started, of course. he gave the mantle to Kazakhstan, because there has always been some sort of a latent rivalry for leadership as far as Central Asia is concerned between Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan. But he very generously and graciously offered it to Kazakhstan, and the then President Nursultan Nazarbayev in 2018, he hosted the first meeting. Then it came to Uzbekistan, and now it has become a regular practice. He has resolved so many of the border issues, whether it is with Kyrgyzstan or with Tajikistan, that he has really helped to bring up Central Asia as a strong, united entity. Of course, so going forward, there are still very many challenges, but at least the first few steps have been taken in that direction.
It's important for our listeners to understand this region because when it comes to Indian media, it's not really talked about much. It doesn't get the attention that it should, keeping in mind the large swaths of territory we're talking about, the territory that is rich in natural resources. And of course, you spoke about how Mirzaev has kind of brought about a coherence within Central Asian post-Soviet neighbors. It's interesting that actually in the constitution, for the first time, he has enshrined this as well, saying that a lot of focus on peaceful relations with the world, but in particular with the Central Asian neighbors, saying that there should be peaceful resolution of disputes, talking about territorial sovereign integrity. So does that in a way also suggest that Mirziyoyev's position as the leader of the Central Asian countries today is cemented, Ambassador Sajjanhar?
Yeah, just one comment here. You said that treatment of Central Asia in the Indian media is rather minimal or rather scarce. It is not only the Indian media. You go around the world, it is you don't really hear anything much about Central Asia being written at all. And the way I look at it is that Central Asia has been a victim of its own success, because the media will write about places where there are problems, where there's violence, where there is chaos. You see, Afghanistan is always in the news. You see, Pakistan is always in the news, not for good reasons, because there are some bomb blasts, etc., happening. Now, as far as Central Asia is concerned, you take it from 1991 till now, barring a few stray cases, which would be really the exceptions to prove the rule, that this region has been by and large stable, it has been secure, it has been liberal, except last year, and if you want, we can speak about last year when the problems took place in Kazakhstan in January. There were some problems in Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan in July of last year, and also on the border between Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan in September last year. We can speak about that, but barring that, there have been a few cases of violence in this region. Otherwise, this region has been by and large stable and secure. Now, coming to your question that whether he has uh, emerged as a leader, you're right. He has been able to bring a coherence and synergy as far as this region is concerned, in terms of also trying to promote connectivity. He has taken a number of steps in the right direction. Although it would be important to remember and realize for your viewers and listeners that Uzbekistan is not the largest country in Central Asia. Whether it is in terms of territory, it's Kazakhstan, or it is in terms of economy, it's Kazakhstan, but in terms of population, it definitely is Uzbekistan. So I think he has really helped to bring these countries together. As I said, when Mr. Islam Karimov was the president of Uzbekistan, the presidents of Uzbekistan and Kyrgyzstan were not on talking terms. There have not been flights between Tajikistan, between Dushanbe and Tashkent for last several decades. So all that has changed now with Uzbekistan coming in, and there is much greater interaction much greater to and fro travel between the leaders and cooperation between all these countries.
Yes.
Can't hear you. Can't hear you, Smita. Can't hear you. Can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Yeah. So, yes, let's just slightly touch upon the issues that you raised, because you did mention the riotings that happened in Kazakhstan last year. And Kalpakstan is something that I also discussed with my Uzbek expert, where we spoke about that how, under the new constitution, what President Mirziyoyev had suggested was trying to redraw the autonomy of the region. They have ethnic minorities there, to try and take away their regional autonomy of their self right to determination. And that's what led to rare protests, rare rioting. We saw at least 18 people dead, and eventually the president had to back down. But in terms of the Kazakhstan issue, if we could throw a little bit light upon, how much of it was really fueled also, adding to the worries that what kind of Islam could also be coming into the region, what kind of extremist ideology could be coming into the region from the Taliban in Afghanistan. What are the worries really? Because at the end of the day, Central Asia did have a lot of homegrown outfits to radical outfits, which have been a problem for these countries.
Yeah, so first, one comment on the violence and the protests that erupted in Kyrgyzstan. I think it is to the statesmanship and to the sagacious leadership of President Mirziyoyev that he immediately walked back on the change in the constitution that was going to be made. He responded to the sentiments of the people there. So I think that goes to his credit rather than letting this whole protest simmer and continue. He sort of just walked back, and that was the end. So it was just a few days. Coming to Kazakhstan, of course, when the whole the protests and demonstrations started on really the 1st of January last year, and uh, really came to the fore by about the 4th of January, within 3 or 4 days. At that time, the President Tokayev had said that there are several thousands, tens of thousands terrorists who have come from other countries, from Afghanistan. They are speaking some different language. And so, he termed it as a terrorist attack. And as a result, I think about 12,000 odd people were arrested. About 225 people were killed. That is the official figure. But what it appears now from the details that have come out, that it was somehow a battle for control within, for a battle between the elites. And the elites, some of them who were associated with Mr. Nursultan Nazarbayev, the first president of the country, whether it was his relatives or associates, when they thought that their power, their control, the perks, privileges, benefits that were accruing to them as a result of power having been handed over to Mr. Tokayev on the 20th of March 2019, that it was some sort of a protest that was launched by them. That is why you see that Mr. Nazarbayev, over the last 1.5 years, he has been literally cut to size. All the powers, all the uh, position that he had been given, for instance, he was given a constitutional position of Elbasi, the leader of the country. That has been taken away. Any mention about the contribution that Mr. Nazarbayev had made to the building up of the country since it became independent in 1991, and his contribution has been truly huge, momentous. All that reference has been removed. He was, of course, he was the chairman of the National Security Council. That position was taken away from him on the 5th of January last year by Tokayev. He was also the head of the Nurotan party, that is the major party, which is the ruling party. He was removed from there. So all the positions have been taken away from him. The secretary of the National Security Council, who was his confidant, and the former Prime Minister Karim Masimov, he has been he was put in prison. There have been charges of treason that were leveled against him. And just 2 days ago, the news came that he has been put behind bars for 18 years. He has been imprisoned for 18 years. One of the nephews of Nur Sultan Nazarbayev has been imprisoned. All the power, all the authority, and all the uh, the economic benefits and privileges of relatives of President Nazarbayev, his daughters, etc. They have been severely curtailed, and all those companies that they were running that have been taken away. So basically, what it appears right now is not so much a terrorist action having taken place, but a fight between for power between the elites of the country. That having been said, the danger of terrorism to this region is only grown, particularly after the changes in Afghanistan in 2021. And also in Uzbekistan, we see that there have been groups like Islamic Movement of Uzbekistan, Hizb ut-Tahrir, etc., etc., which are active. And unless they are controlled, there is a risk and there is a danger that they could create problems for Afghanistan, for Uzbekistan, and for other countries in the region.
But how did it happen that is when you look at these countries, and especially in India, amongst the Indians, unfortunately, there is a lot of stereotyping about Muslim majority nations. That if you go to these nations, there'll be extremism, there will be poverty, but there are so many countries that you go to and you find these stereotypes challenged. When it comes to the Central Asian countries, when it comes to Uzbekistan, the kind of secularism that they practice, it's not known about much, it's not talked about much. So how did they manage to keep at that?
Yeah, so I'll again repeat what I said, that these countries are victims of their own success because they've been stable. So no one really talks about it. As they say, good news is no news. So unless there are some problems, that people will start talking about it. But I think whatever I have studied the region and the people, I think their association with the Soviet Union for about 70 years or so, I think that has had a huge role to play in the fact that they are so secular, they are so liberal in their outlook. And you have been there in Uzbekistan recently, and you would have seen how sort of open the society is, and men and women, how they relate to each other, how they interact with each other. So I would say that much of the credit really goes to their association. They were a part of the Soviet Union, and at that time, of course, religion was not promoted. Religion was frowned upon. Any type of religion, whether it was Russian Orthodox Christianity, or it is Islam, or any other religion, it was not really supported. But that having been said, over the last few years, we see that significant money has started coming into the region, particularly into the poorer countries like Kyrgyzstan, like Tajikistan, and that is you see the teaching and the training in the madrasas, the setting up of this brand new shining mosques that are being created. So there is increased radicalization in these countries. You would see that many of the youth from these countries, particularly Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan, they had gone and joined the Islamic State. Many of them are also operative in Afghanistan. So there is a real threat and danger. The terror attacks that took place in St. Petersburg, in Moscow, because many of the youngsters from here, they go to work in the Russian Federation, because that is, there is similarity of culture, language. They don't need visas, and the economy when it was growing, that is before the Russia-Ukraine conflict. It provided very easy access to people from here. As I said, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, and Uzbekistan. So many of them are there in Russia. Many of them also tended to get radicalized from there also. And from there also they went and joined the Islamic State. So what I would say is that the fact that it has not happened, this extremism and radicalization did not take place in the past, should not lead us to complacency. There is a very real threat and a very real danger. And in that context, I think it is essential for Central Asia and India to work together, because India has an experience of dealing with this radicalization in the country and in the region, and we can really work together in that context. And I think SCO is a good platform on which we can work together, on which we can collaborate.
Which brings me, to the next set of questions on A. Of course, we'll talk about SEO in just a few minutes, but one of the things again that within Uzbekistan is changing, within Central Asia is changing, is the transformation of the economy. So, previously, just in the recent past, when people wouldn't even spend, lest their spendings were targeted by the state, the consumer spendings were low. Now the closed economy has started to become a liberal economy. So, what does it hold for a country like India when it comes to step? I know Prime Minister Modi visited all Central Asian countries, the five neighbors, in 2015. There is a Central Asia connectivity sort of a policy approach to it, and we have started sending off stuff like mangoes or frozen buffalo through the Bandar Abbas port in Iran. But really, what does it hold in terms of the potential for Indian companies, for India to be invested in this region?
Yeah, so there are a number of reasons why India needs to be invested in this region, and in that context, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization plays a very important role. One of the biggest hurdles and obstacles in expanding and enhancing our partnership and collaboration with this region is that we do not have geographical contiguity with this region. De jure, we might say that we do have it because Pakistan occupied Kashmir has a sliver of a connect with Tajikistan, but de facto we don't have that because Pakistan occupied Kashmir is not under our administrative control at the moment. So, and Pakistan does not permit access to either Afghanistan or to Central Asian countries to India. You would recall that even very recently we wanted to send 50,000 tons of wheat for the people of Afghanistan, and even that there were so many bottlenecks and stumbles, hurdles that we had to cross to send even 40,000 tons. And so that we are now trying to skirt around the issue of Pakistan not providing us connectivity by going through Chabahar and by once again reviving and revitalizing the international north south transport corridor. We started that, I remember, when I used to be in Moscow in the late 1990s. We had started looking at that route and working on that route from the Russian Federation through Azerbaijan, Iran, and then to India, a multimodal transport route. But because of the sanctions on Iran from early 2000 onwards, that really did not take off. And so we started after the JCPOA was signed in 2015, that Prime Minister Modi traveled to Iran in May of 2016. And we had the trilateral at that time. Ashraf Ghani was the president in Afghanistan. And so we started working on Chabahar. And I would say that I think we made decent progress because from May 2016 till 3rd December 2017, when the inauguration of the Shahid Bahishti terminal in Chabahar was made, in about 1.5 years, we were able to expand the capacity of the seaport from 2.5 million tons to 8.5 million tons. There are still challenges of connecting Chabahar to Zahedan and then on to Afghanistan Iran border, and from there connecting to the Zaranj Delaram road that we have made in Afghanistan. So connectivity is one particular issue that India is working on. Second is, as you have mentioned, this region is extremely rich in natural and mineral resources. In natural resources, uh, Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan are extremely rich in water, hydropower, and which they can generate. And of course, India is a very ready market. And countries like Kazakhstan, it has huge supplies of oil, of significant supplies of gas. It is the second largest reserves of uranium. So also Uzbekistan, large supplies of oil and gas. And of course, as far as Turkmenistan is concerned, it has the world's fourth largest reserves of gas, of natural gas. And of course, from Turkmenistan, we have been talking about the Tapi pipeline, Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan, India pipeline. But because of the security, adverse security conditions in Afghanistan, which have become even worse over the last 2 years, and situation in Pakistan and our relations being quite abnormal, we have not been able to work on that. So, natural resources, energy security is also an important element. The third element I would say is we have discussed about security aspects as to how terrorism is a challenge for all these countries. Radicalization is a challenge. In the recent SCO foreign ministers meeting, External Affairs Minister Jaishankar specifically spoke about document on de-radicalization that we are working on and that we hope will be accepted and adopted at the summit in July. There are other aspects, if I could mention what Dr. Jaishankar mentioned. One is in the area of what India has been able to do very well in during these challenging COVID times and geopolitical upheavals is in terms of digitization. And digitization has been a huge success in terms of the UPI, the Unified Payment Interface. 40% of the global financial transactions are conducted in India. So that we can share with the Central Asian countries and other members. What the call that Prime Minister Modi has given for lifestyle for environment. So that in terms of dealing with the food security concerns, making millet a part of our daily use. So I think there are a number of areas, of course, in the area of information technology, in the area of startups, in the area of pharmaceuticals. There are so many areas where India has strengths and where we would really be able to cooperate extremely well with the Central Asian countries. I think connectivity, as I mentioned, is one particular element that is keeping our relationship in a suboptimal level. And the other, I would say, is that there is a lack of information. There is a huge information divide. You have gone to Uzbekistan, you would have spoken to people. I don't think there is a recognition in Uzbekistan at the moment, or in Central Asia at the moment, in terms of the uh, rapid strides that India has made in the area, in different areas of technology and economy. And
There's an
likewise in India.
entire IT park now, which was set up by Indian from Neti, which I wasn't aware of. And there are Uzbek students who are studying engineering on, of course, iTech fellowships too, on ICCR fellowships too. So there is
Yeah,
some
ITech and
progress.
ICCR fellowships have been there for a long time.
Yeah.
But, the point that you mentioned, I want to emphasize that even in India, there is very little information about the huge changes that have taken place in these countries. For instance, who would know that the per capita GDP in Kazakhstan is about $12,000? And in purchasing power parity terms, it's about $26,000 per capita. And this might have come down as a result of the Russia Ukraine conflict. but not by too much, maybe 23,000, 24,000. So there are huge possibilities and huge opportunities. In recent past, we have seen Sharda University opening there. We have seen Amity University opening there. We've seen some other universities. So I think in the area of education, medicine, health, so many areas we need to. There's huge potential to work together.
Yes, and it's a very, very young country. A lot of these countries, their demographics, the youth demographics are also potentials to be maximized upon. But Ambassador Sajjanhar, coming back to SCO, as we look at that summit meeting in July, India is hosting SCO in a year that it is also hosting G20, the presidency. So it leads India to a very strange situation because, on the one hand, within G20, India is trying to ward off the pressures from US led West to gang up against its old ally of Russia. But within SCO, India will also have to ward off pressures from that, the sort of a tango between Russia, China, and now Iran to ensure that it does not become a forum for simply anti West formulations. So it's going to be a challenge for India as a host country.
Yeah, you're right. It's going to be a challenge. I think the challenge has really been there for last several, not only months, I would say, but years. Because if you look at the SEO, there is also this whole issue of the Belt and Road Initiative, the BRI. And all the other members, the seven members, are in favor of the BRI. Only India is not. But India has stood its ground, and if you look at any of the declarations over the last since 2017 when India became a member, it's always mentioned that all countries support the BRI except India. So India has the capacity to stand its ground on issues. And India does not wish this forum to become an anti West alliance. And you have mentioned about Russia, China, and Iran, but we should also be mindful that the four Central Asian countries which are members of this, and like when we talk about the Indo-Pacific, etc., we say that ASEAN centrality will always be there. So here, when we are talking about the SCO, then we are speaking about the centrality of Central Asia. And these four countries, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, and Kyrgyzstan, all of them have excellent relations also with the United States and the West. And none of them would like that it should be SEO should be turned, should transform itself into an anti-West alliance. That's why you have seen even Kazakhstan, as I said, the biggest economy in the region. They have said we are not going to violate any of the sanctions imposed by the West on Kazakhstan because we don't want to be hit by secondary sanctions. So all these countries, they want good economic, political, investment relations with the West, and we have strong partners in them. It's not only India that is standing up in not making this into an anti-West alliance, but of course, their strength would also increase very significantly. Just left to themselves, the four Central Asian countries might have felt a little unsure, but with India with them, I don't think we will permit the SCO to be converted into any sort of anti-West alliance. And we have seen over the last few years that it has, on those issues, it has maintained a reasonably balanced position.
I think there is also a palpable sense of discomfort within the Central Asian neighbors about this regional power play ongoing between, of course, there's Russia, which whom it has had cultural, civilizational links, and then you have a China, which is invested heavily when it comes to the economics, politics of the region too. So, and especially in the shadow of the Ukrainian war, they may not be saying it aloud, but there is a discomfort with the fact that Russia did invade Ukraine. So, with this regional power play ongoing, perhaps the Central Asian countries would also be looking at India towards a third alternate.
Yeah, they're looking for options because earlier it used to be, I used to think that it was rather simplistic and naive assessment to think that Russia, which considers this to be a part of its near abroad, would be focusing on the security. And of course, it has its biggest base, 702 base in Tajikistan, with several thousand of its soldiers who are stationed there. And in the other countries also, it has a very huge security presence. And China was seen to be focusing basically on economic aspects in terms of trade, investment, in terms of connectivity, the Belt and Road initiative going through Kazakhstan to Europe, through getting all the oil and gas pipelines from Turkmenistan, Kazakhstan, and Uzbekistan. But I think that this Russia Ukraine conflict has, in a manner, upended this, rather what was considered a balanced presence of the two major powers in the region. Because obviously, Russia's clout and profile and influence in the region has come down somewhat, and China's influence economically and also in the security region, that has increased. And that has made these countries, as you rightly said, very uncomfortable. The increasing presence of China, in any case, even before the war, was making these countries uncomfortable. And I'll give you maybe just one or two examples. One is in terms of the treatment of the Uyghur Muslims in Xinjiang. And all these countries are Sunni Muslims. Two countries, particularly Kazakhstan and Kyrgyzstan, have many of their own nationals in Xinjiang, have been working in Xinjiang for many decades, if not centuries. And they also are faced with the sort of oppression and the persecution that the Chinese, the Han majority, is undertaking in Xinjiang. So this is one. Second is, just to give you two examples. I recall in 2010 when I was there, then President Nazarbayev had, there was a suggestion that about 1 million hectares of land in Kazakhstan would be leased out to Chinese companies for agricultural purposes. There were such huge demonstrations and protests against it that this proposal had to be shelved. There was a similar proposal in 2016 that also had to be shelved. When Tokayev became the president in March of 2019 and his first visit to China, there were huge protests in the country saying that that Kazakhstan should considerably diminish and dilute its relations with China because it was having a very significant influence. And all this has increased with the passage of time. The elite might not say it, but the people feel it and they voice their sentiments. So these countries are definitely looking outwards. And in that context, they are looking for new options, and that they are looking at India, they are looking at Turkey, they are looking at Iran, they are even looking at the United States and the European Union. So I think India can definitely cooperate and collaborate. Like, there was very recently last year, there was a document on India EU cooperation. And in that, joint projects in Central Asia have been mentioned in that context. So I think India definitely in areas where we have common positions. Like in the case we are doing with Japan, India and Japan working together in Bangladesh, working together in Sri Lanka. So similarly, some countries can work together to go to Central Asia so that there are more options that are provided to these countries, which are more transparent and which are more balanced, environmentally friendly, sustainable, economically viable options are made available to them.
So, just as I start to wrap up this conversation, just the last two questions that come to my mind, Ambassador Sajjanhar. A is why is this membership now looking so enticing of the SCO to so many countries? I mean, we are looking at Iran coming in facilitating the entry of Belarus. India wants Maldives, Myanmar into the forum. You also have countries like Saudi to Turkey, either as observers or as dialogue partners. Why is the SCO becoming an important forum for so many countries wanting to seek membership?
I think as multilateralism continues to disappoint and continues to fail, so countries are coming on multilateral sort of, this fora, plurilateral fora to sort of, work together to see where they can work together, to see what they can do together. As far as Iran is concerned, I think it'll be interesting for the viewers and listeners to note that its membership of the SCO, which should be finalized in July at the summit that takes place in Delhi, that this is the first global multilateral organization that Iran would be joining after the Islamic Revolution in 1979. So, Iran has been a pariah state. Iran has been a totally isolated state. And so it wants to find a platform where it can work together with countries. As far as Turkey is concerned, Saudi Arabia is concerned, I don't think that, their membership or right now they will really be as dialogue partners. And dialogue partners is the third rung. First is members, then observers, then dialogue partners. And so it is not as if they are going to sever their relations with the United States and West. I'm sure that Turkey will continue to be a part of NATO. Saudi Arabia, its defense partnership with the United States will continue. But I think these countries are also wanting to hedge their options and wanting to have, let us say, different platforms on which they can work together. UAE will come there, Egypt will come there. For instance, the minilateral I2U2, like IPEF. These are minilateral or different fora and platforms where different countries who have maybe greater comfort level with each other, they will come, they will try to work with each other, and not necessarily that there is any hostility. After all, India is a member of SCO, India is a member of BRICS, India is a member of RIC, India is a member of Quad, India is a member of ITU2, and of three of the four elements of IPEF. So, Indo-Pacific Economic Framework. So I think different countries, if multilateral systems were working well, if the WTO was working well, if the UN Security Council had been reformed, changes had been made, and it was able to be effective, then maybe there would not be such a rush for membership of such organizations.
Yes, and I think the fact that there are not too many forums, of course, with a sort of a non-US led, non-Western approach that makes it appealing. Also, it provides a platform. At the end of the day, we have seen, when a SARC does not take off because of the India-Pakistan hostility shadow, but the two countries still manage to be in the same room within SCO. When India, China, of course, don't see eye to eye on the border, but they are still working together, be it under BRICS or be it under SCO. So finally, ahead of the July summit meeting, Ambassador Sajjanhar, would you like to crystal gaze as to what could be or should be the biggest outcome from that summit meeting that, of course, Prime Minister Modi will be chairing?
Okay, that's very tempting to, crystal gaze, but let me try to give it a shot. I think most of the countries that are on this platform, I think they have a much greater comfort level with each other. As far as this forum is concerned, there is the United States is not present, Europe is not present, so there is a much greater comfort level. You would have seen that in the body language between Dr. Jaishankar and Sergei Lavrov. How they were smiling with each other. Meaning, if the similar thing in G20 when Mr. Lavrov was so pugnacious at the Raisina dialogue, because the atmospherics at that time was, that there are other countries which are present. Now, of course, you mentioned about India, China, India, Pakistan, but these are bilateral issues, and bilateral issues do not occupy any position as far as the SEO discussions are concerned. So, these might be on the side meetings, which there might be sort of, some difficulties and problems. But as far as the SEO is concerned, I think it will be fairly smooth going forward, because I think we also need to recognize, Smitha, that SEO has also not been a particularly successful organization so far. It, as Shanghai 5, it came up in 1996. As SEO, it started its journey in 2001. I don't think you will be able to pinpoint even a single success story of the SEO, like you can do in the case of BRICS. BRICS has, the BRICS Bank, the new development bank is there, the currency reserve swap system they have been able to put in place. As far as SEO is concerned, although there are military exercises which are known as the peace mission and so on and so forth, there have been proposals for having an SEO energy club, an SEO FTA, an SEO bank. None of them has been able to go forward. So, whatever is written, it is whether it is on the issue of terrorism, that we will cooperate and we will work together and so on and so forth. But we know what the end result on that is. Still, I don't want to take away from the significance and importance of the SEO, because SEO is it has a huge potential. We need to recognize that. More than 40% of the world population, more than 30% of the global GDP in purchasing power parity terms. In nominal dollar terms, I think it is about 24%. But so it's a huge expanse. It's a huge space, both political and territorial, and it has huge potential also. But so far, it has not really been able, even on Afghanistan, and we have a contact group in the on Afghanistan in SEO since 2009. But the NATO left, ISAF left, US left, but SU was nowhere to be seen to be able to contribute in bringing stability or changes. Even as far as Kazakhstan is concerned, when it happened last year, SU was not there. It was CSTO, the Collective Security Treaty Organization, which sent in the troops. So I think there is lack of coherence and lack of cohesiveness as far as SEO is concerned, for exactly the same reasons that you mentioned. That there are these big powers, and then there are smaller powers who are not really able to call the shots. But all that having been said, sorry, my crystal gazing has gone on for far too long.
That's
But
it's a difficult crystal gazing, I do
yeah,
understand.
yeah. So there are many ifs and buts and many sort of, possibilities. But what I would venture is that what Dr. Jaishankar mentioned, the Delhi Declaration and the four accompanying documents on de-radicalization, on millets, on lifestyle for environment, and on as far as digitization is concerned. I think we should be able to accept, agree on all these, and even the Delhi Declaration would be a strong declaration giving a good roadmap for SEO to move forward and to strengthen its cooperation in a variety of ways.
Okay, I'm going to end this podcast here. It has been a pleasure and enlightening to hear you, Ambassador Sajjanhar. I'm hoping that our listeners have a lot of food for thought. Of course, do visit Central Asia too, just as tourists, as I mentioned. A lot of these countries, many of our Bollywood stars, film stars can actually run for elections. That's their level of popularity. Amazing food, kind people. But just our attempt here at this Beyond Nation and State episode to try and break down not just what's happening within Central Asia, but also vis a vis India and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization of the path that the forum is taking. Thank you so much, Ambassador Sajjanhar.
Thank you, Smita. Pleasure to be with you. Thank you.